In our modern world, where everyone seems to be racing against time, chasing headlines, achievements, and attention, silence has become a rare luxury. We live in cities that never sleep, scroll through social networks that never pause, and work in environments that constantly demand more. Amid the chaos of noise, information, and expectations, there lies a powerful force that few recognize: the power of stillness. Stillness isn't merely the absence of sound. It is an inner space, a sanctuary where the mind rests, emotions settle, and intelligence is allowed to shine. In stillness, ideas are born. In stillness, problems are seen clearly. And in stillness, we hear our truest voice, unburdened by the noise of the external world. Imagine an inventor sitting alone in a small room. No conversations, no phone alerts, no deadlines looming over his shoulders. Just a pen, a blank page, and a quiet mind. At first, he may feel empty or uncertain. But then, like a gentle stream beneath the surface, an idea emerges. Delicate, almost invisible, but filled with potential. Because of the stillness, that idea is not immediately drowned by distractions. It is nurtured, explored, tested, and eventually developed. And that is how all great inventions begin. Albert Einstein once said, "I think and think for 99 times and find nothing. But when I stop thinking, swim in silence, the truth comes to me." His words are not just a personal confession, but a universal truth about creativity. True creativity doesn't come from noise, it comes from silence. When we release ourselves from the pressure of constant productivity, when we allow our minds to breathe outside the fast-paced rhythm of life, creativity flows freely. The Japanese have a beautiful concept called ma, the space between things, the pause between sounds, the gap between actions. They believe that ma is where life actually happens. In the art of ikebana, the empty space around the flowers is just as important as the flowers themselves. In traditional music, the pause between notes gives the melody its power. And in thinking, it is the stillness, the pause, that gives birth to wisdom. Look closely at the habits of extraordinary people. They are not always rushing, not always busy, not always speaking. They know how to pause. Bill Gates takes 1 week each year called Think Week, a time when he disconnects completely, avoids meetings and emails, and simply reads, reflects, and lets his mind wander. Many of Microsoft's pivotal ideas were born in those quiet weeks. Steve Jobs was known for his solo walks, not for exercise, but for deep thinking. He believed that walking in silence was the best way to solve complex problems. Apple's most important strategic decisions often came not from noisy boardrooms, but from these solitary, reflective moments. Stillness serves an even deeper role. It reconnects you with yourself. In the whirlwind of daily life, we often lose track of our purpose. Each day, we wake, work, respond, reply, chase deadlines, and collapse into bed. We live in reflex, not reflection. Stillness invites us back to our core, asking, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What truly matters to me? Those who never pause to ask these questions often find themselves burnt out. Not because they did too much, but because they never understood why. In contrast, those who embrace stillness have clarity. They choose more wisely, act more intentionally, and live more meaningfully. There's a fascinating scientific phenomenon called the DMN effect, the default mode network. It's a neural network that lights up most intensely when your brain isn't focused on a task. In other words, your brain is most creative when it's not being told what to do. The quiet moments. Sitting alone on a bus, watching the rain, walking through a park without a phone. These are the moments when the DMN thrives. Connections between ideas appear, new insights arrive, solutions emerge seemingly from nowhere. Yet, what do we often do in those free moments? We reach for our phones, we scroll, we reply, we fill the silence with distraction. In doing so, we miss the sacred opportunity for the mind to land, breathe, and soar. When was the last time you sat in silence? No music, no phone, no conversation. Did you feel restless? Did you want to fill the gap? That's natural. We've become so used to noise that silence feels uncomfortable. But if you push past that initial discomfort, you enter a new depth, a space where clarity, creativity, and calm reside. A therapist once said, "I've never seen someone find themselves in a crowd. They always find themselves in silence." And that holds true for all of us. Whether you're an artist, entrepreneur, student, or caregiver, you need moments of stillness to truly live, not just survive. Stillness doesn't have to be long. Sometimes just 10 minutes a day is enough to make a difference. Sit quietly. Close your eyes. Breathe. Don't force thoughts. Don't do anything. Just be, as you are. You'll find yourself refreshed, recharged. The knots in your mind slowly untie. The fog lifts, and you emerge with a new mindset. The world doesn't need you to always react. It doesn't need instant answers. It doesn't need you to constantly speak or prove yourself. What the world and you truly need is a person who can pause, listen, feel, and begin again from within. Stillness is a form of power, a power that isn't loud, isn't measurable, and isn't always visible, but its impact is undeniable. Those who embrace stillness are more grounded, more insightful, and often more visionary than those who are constantly driven by the noise of the outside world. And if you're searching for clarity in life, begin by sitting in silence. No complex meditation, no elaborate techniques, just you and quiet. In that space, something magical happens. Ideas come, directions appear, and you, the real you, return. In a world that never stops talking, stillness is the boldest declaration of personal power. Once the mind has been quieted as we explored previously, the next phase is simple, yet profound. Learn to see without rushing to speak. We live in a world obsessed with expression. Social media platforms have given everyone a microphone. Opinion is currency. Reaction is expected. The person who speaks quickly, loudly, and often is celebrated, or so it seems. But beneath the surface of this noisy landscape, real transformation belongs not to those who always have something to say, but to those who are willing to wait, to watch, and to listen. Observation is the natural extension of stillness. Once we've created the space for deep thinking, that space becomes fertile ground for another remarkable power, perceptiveness. Think of the wisest people you've encountered. They're rarely the first to speak in a room. They don't interrupt. They don't dominate conversations. Instead, they watch. They notice subtle shifts, a raised eyebrow, a hesitant pause, a forced smile. They pick up on what others miss. And because they don't feel the need to be constantly heard, when they do choose to speak, everyone listens. This isn't accidental. It's intentional mastery, the quiet art of absorbing before contributing. Let's imagine a high-stakes business meeting. Dozens of voices clamor to offer their perspective, hoping to impress. But in the corner sits someone quiet. She doesn't jump in. She listens. She watches who interrupts whom. She sees who gets defensive, who stays composed, who avoids eye contact at key moments. When she finally speaks, not to dominate, but to offer clarity, the room goes still. Her words carry the weight of wisdom that only comes from deliberate attention. This kind of presence isn't just effective in boardrooms, it's transformational in life. We often underestimate how much people reveal, not through what they say, but through what they do when they think no one is watching. The nervous habits, the way someone treats a waiter, the tone shift when speaking to a subordinate. These are gold mines of information. But we miss them because we're too busy planning our next line, too anxious to prove ourselves. Yet the person who cultivates silence within, as we discussed in part 1, also becomes capable of external silence. This is not just the absence of speech, but the presence of focused awareness. The silent observer sees more and therefore understands more. And in a world where true understanding is rare, this is a superpower. Eleanor Whitfield, a retail legend, built a commercial empire not by dominating conversations in strategy rooms, but by silently studying customers. While competitors talked over buyers, pitching products, she simply watched. She noticed the paths shoppers naturally followed. She paid attention to which shelves they lingered by, what textures they touched, and what items they put back, and why. Her insights didn't come from focus groups or surveys. They came from silence, from watching what no one else bothered to see. When asked the secret behind her store's revolutionary layouts, she didn't credit consultants. She said simply, "I just pay attention." Think of that. In an industry driven by trends, she built dominance on attention. Quiet, humble, but laser-focused attention. And what if we took that same approach in our own lives? What if, instead of constantly trying to explain our value, we observed how others add theirs? What if, instead of reacting to every word spoken to us, we learned to watch the energy in the room, the rhythm of conversations, the gaps between what is said and what is meant? When you observe more, you notice patterns. You begin to understand motivations. You sense when someone's enthusiasm is genuine and when it's performance. You see where people place their attention, which is almost always where their values lie. Great negotiators understand this. They listen more than they speak. They let the other party reveal themselves, their priorities, fears, leverage, all in the spaces between words. And then they respond, not with force, but with precision. Observation also teaches humility. It reminds us that we don't always have the answer, that there is wisdom in others, that if we pay attention, every human interaction becomes a classroom. But observation isn't passive. It's active stillness. It requires engagement, but not assertion. It requires curiosity, but not judgment. It asks us to step out of our ego and into a posture of learning. Here's something powerful. The quietest person in the room is often learning the most. Not because they're smarter, but because they're listening with intention. This doesn't mean silence is always superior. There are moments to speak, to assert, to lead vocally. But the quality of those moments is directly related to the quality of our prior observation. In other words, the more deeply you see, the more powerfully you speak. A young leader once asked her mentor, "How can I become more persuasive?" The mentor didn't suggest a book on rhetoric or a course in public speaking. She said, "Double your listening. Speak last. People will trust your voice more if they know it comes from understanding." So much of modern life encourages the opposite. We are rewarded for speed, for reaction, for visibility. But influence, the kind that lasts, often comes from those who wait, who watch, who speak only after they have fully absorbed the dynamics around them. In this way, observation becomes a form of leadership. It builds relationships. When people feel truly seen and heard, they open up, they relax, they trust. And in that trust, real connection happens. It also drives innovation. Many breakthrough ideas come not from brainstorming in a vacuum, but from watching how people behave, where they struggle, what they need but aren't saying. And it fosters self-awareness, because as you watch others, you begin to watch yourself, your impulses, your biases, your blind spots. The world becomes a mirror, reflecting not just others, but also who you are becoming. Observation, when rooted in the stillness from part one, becomes the next layer of growth. It's not just about being quiet, it's about being present. Not just hearing, but truly seeing. And perhaps, in a world obsessed with expression, choosing to observe is the most radical expression of all. So the next time you enter a room, ask yourself, must I speak? Or is this a moment to listen? Before you rush to respond, pause. Before you jump in, watch. You might be amazed by what the world reveals when you stop trying to explain yourself and start trying to understand. Because in the end, wisdom is not about having all the answers. It's about knowing what questions to ask and having the patience to wait for what life will teach you. In silence, in the heat of an unexpected criticism, or the flare-up of a tense moment, most of us react instinctively. A burning sensation rises in the chest, blood rushes to the head, and words come out before thought catches up. These split-second reactions may feel satisfying at first, but more often than not, they leave damage behind. A strained relationship, a lost opportunity, a tarnished reputation. We often mistake quick responses for strength. But the truth is, real strength isn't found in the immediate reaction. It's found in the pause. The person who stays silent in a tense moment isn't speechless. They're choosing to respond, not to be dragged around by their emotions. Silence in the most heated moments is a profound form of strength. It's the decision of someone who has mastery over themselves. It's the space between a thoughtless outburst and a meaningful response. It's where reason finds room to rise above impulse. When you're provoked, misunderstood, or wrongfully accused, the easiest thing to do is react. The hardest thing to do is to pause. But it is in that very pause that you reclaim your power. Instead of lashing out, you can choose to stay composed. Instead of exploding with anger, you can remain silent and look deeper into what's really happening. Picture a leader in the middle of a high-pressure meeting, where tensions are rising and voices are clashing. Everyone looks to him to restore control. He doesn't yell. He doesn't interrupt. He sits quietly, breathing deeply. The room slowly begins to settle. Not because of what he says, but because of what he doesn't say. When he finally speaks, calmly, clearly, and without emotion, everyone listens, and everything shifts. We cannot control how others act, but we can always control how we respond. And often, the wisest response is no response at all, at least not right away. That kind of silence isn't passive. It's an intentional inner strategy. It allows us to identify what we're feeling, to assess what's really happening, and to respond in a way that aligns with who we want to be. not who we are in the heat of the moment. Have you ever said something in anger that you later regretted? How many times has a split-second reaction undone months of effort? Emotions like anger, jealousy, disappointment, and hurt, they're real. They're human. But how we handle them will determine the quality of our relationships and our personal growth. A psychologist once said, "The space between stimulus and response is where your freedom lives." That simple line can change the way you see yourself. When someone offends you, that's the stimulus. A sharp reply is the reflex. But between the two, if you insert a pause, you regain your freedom. In that pause, you can choose calm. You can choose silence. You can choose to act in line with the person you're becoming, not the person your emotions want to drag you back to. To do that, you must learn to read the signals of emotion. Tune into your body. Is your heart racing? Are your fists clenched? Is your jaw tight? These are your early warnings. When you feel them, stop, breathe, count to 5. Ask yourself, what do I really want from this situation? It's probably not to win an argument. It's not to get the last word. It's to preserve a relationship, to keep your dignity, to uphold your integrity. This is a practice. It starts with small moments. When someone cuts you off in traffic. When someone spreads misinformation about you. When you're misunderstood in a meeting. Each time you choose silence over outburst, you're strengthening your emotional control like a muscle. Over time, you'll notice the change. Fewer conflicts, deeper connections, and more doors opening. The most respected people aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones with quiet strength, the ones who remain grounded no matter what. Their presence brings calm to chaos. In times of crisis, people naturally turn to them, not because they shout, but because they don't need to. There's a story of a renowned judge. During a particularly tense trial, tempers flared and lawyers began shouting over one another. The judge didn't pound the gavel. He didn't yell. He simply sat in silence, eyes lowered. When the room finally quieted down, he looked up and said calmly, "Shall we continue with respect now?" Just one sentence. Not loud, not threatening, but the entire courtroom shifted. That's the power of someone who has mastered their emotions. And the best part? Anyone can develop it. You don't need a title. You don't need authority. You just need the desire to improve the quality of your life and relationships. When you learn to pause before reacting, you take ownership of your life. You are no longer driven by other people's emotions. You're no longer at the mercy of your environment. You become the master, not only of the space around you, but more importantly, of the world within. And when you have that mastery, you gain influence. People will listen to you, not because you speak loudly, but because you speak at the right time. They'll trust you, not because you're a great debater, but because you don't need to argue. They'll respect you, not because you show off power, but because you radiate inner power. This world doesn't lack people who can argue, but it does crave people who can respond with intention, who can be quiet when everyone is loud, who can remain calm when everything is chaos, who understand that, in many moments, silence isn't weakness. It's the highest expression of growth. Start today. When emotions rise, pause. When misunderstood, breathe. When faced with unfairness, let silence help you regain your clarity. And once you've found it, respond. Not from your emotion, but from your wisdom, from your values, from the version of yourself you're proud to be. Because in the end, the person who wins is not the one who reacts the fastest. It's the one who holds on to themselves in the storm, through the quiet power of silence. Silence is not just a choice for moments when emotions swell, as we explored in the previous section. It's also a deeply strategic approach when taking action, especially when you're working towards something meaningful. In a world where everyone is quick to share plans, goals, and every little step on social media, quiet effort becomes a rare and powerful strength. There's a strange paradox. The more we talk about what we're going to do, the less we actually get done. The wider we announce our intentions, the easier it is to become distracted by the gaze of others. Why? Because the human brain tends to equate talking about something with actually doing it. When we share a goal or an idea, we often receive praise, encouragement, even admiration, despite not having taken a single step. That premature satisfaction weakens our drive to follow through. Silent action is a reflection of deep self-discipline. Those who choose to move in silence don't lack confidence. They simply understand that real value lies in results, not in promises. They don't need to prove every step. They don't need spectators tracking their progress. They pour all their energy into doing, not displaying. Imagine someone quietly working on a personal project. They don't post daily updates. They don't live stream their transformation journey. Instead, they spend each evening learning, experimenting, failing, correcting. They don't need anyone to know, only themselves to see their growth. And then one day, the result arrives. No grand introduction, no trailer, no hype campaign. Just a finished product, a tangible result, strong enough to speak for itself. Margaret Finley, a brilliant entrepreneur, stunned the business world when she unveiled a groundbreaking retail system after 2 years of total silence. While others were attending conferences, posting vision boards, and talking about future models, she quietly worked from a small apartment. Only a few close friends knew she was working on a home project. No outside pressure. No need to impress. No pretending to be successful. When the system launched, it wasn't just an idea. It was a fully functioning model with real customers and real revenue. And no one could deny it. When asked why she kept it all under wraps, she replied simply, "Seeds don't grow if you keep digging them up every day to check on them." That is the wisdom of someone who understands the power of silence. When you announce an idea too soon, you don't just invite expectation. You open the door to doubt. An undeveloped plan is fragile. It can be easily judged, shut down, distorted by misguided advice, unnecessary comparisons, or even stolen. Ironically, the eyes watching us can create anxiety so strong we're afraid to make mistakes, afraid to experiment, afraid to take risks. Silent action gives you the freedom to fail, to repeat, to learn without judgment. It offers you a safe space to grow, not because you're hiding, but because you're protecting the seed that's just beginning to sprout. Not every plan needs to be spoken aloud. Not every dream needs to be shared right away. Some dreams only need to be known by you. And in that privacy, they grow stronger. Silence doesn't mean you lack vision. It means you're focused enough not to scatter your energy. It doesn't mean you lack confidence. It means you're strong enough to let your results speak for you. And it doesn't mean you don't need support. It means you choose to share at the right time, with the right people, when their help will truly matter. In an age where everything is documented, shared, and judged in public view, choosing to keep a journey private is a bold and courageous act. Rebecca Chen, a national-level track athlete, proved this with clarity. While her competitors were constantly posting workouts, sharing updates, and talking to the media about their training regimens, Rebecca trained quietly. Just one coach, one empty track, no updates, no pressure. When she stepped onto the official field and shattered national records, the world was stunned. When asked why she remained silent, she said, "True recognition comes from results, not intentions." In your everyday life, you can operate this way too. You don't need to tell the world you're learning English, trying to lose weight, writing a book, or planning a career change. Let those things unfold in silence. Each morning, you wake up earlier. Each night, you study something new. Each week, you write a few more pages. Each month, you fine-tune a habit. No one knows, and no one needs to, because eventually, the transformation will be visible, not through words, but through the person you've become. Working in silence is liberating. You're no longer bound by others' expectations. You're no longer pressured to look like you're improving. You're free to actually improve, at your own pace. Keep a private progress journal instead of a public scoreboard. Choose one trusted companion instead of hundreds of followers. Let what you're building be sacred, because it belongs to you, not the world's applause. The world is full of people talking about what they're going to do. What it lacks are those who quietly follow through on what they've promised themselves. You don't need a cheering crowd. You don't need a spotlight. All you need is a resilient heart, a focused mind, and a promise whispered to yourself. And one day, that very silence will bloom into results. And when that day comes, you won't need to say anything, because true achievement always knows how to speak for itself. In silence, we learn to master our emotions. We learned how to act without the need for validation. Now, silence takes on an even deeper role. It becomes the foundation of a leadership style rooted in strength, not volume. There's a common misconception that leaders must speak the most, command the loudest, and always be at the center of every decision. But in truth, the most influential person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one who creates the space for others to be heard. True leadership is not about dominating. It's about nurturing. And that can only happen when a leader knows how to step back, to listen, to observe, and to stay silent at the right moments. Picture a high-stakes strategy meeting. Some people rush to contribute their ideas. Others try to stand out. But there's one person, the leader, who says nothing for the first 45 minutes. They listen intently, watching eye movements, body language, how people react to different ideas. Only after everyone has spoken do they offer a few concise, insightful words that synthesize the conversation and provide a clear direction forward. That silence isn't weakness. It's the ground on which powerful words are built. It's the space that allows true understanding, not surface-level reaction. Patricia Winters, CEO of a tech company once on the brink of collapse, transformed her organization's culture with one simple shift. Speak less, listen more. She had been the first and last to speak in every meeting. But as her team became passive and hesitant to share, she realized something had to change. In their most critical strategy meeting, she walked in, wrote a single question on the board. "What do you think?" And then remained completely silent. For 15 minutes, no one spoke. The team was unsure, used to her leading every discussion. Then one person spoke, then another. By the end of the meeting, breakthrough ideas came from people who had never spoken before. The shift began with one simple decision: step back so others could step up. Great leaders don't need to always be right. They create conditions that allow others to be right. They don't issue commands. They ask questions. They don't need to be the smartest in the room. They empower others to bring their intelligence forward. Silence in leadership is not passive. It's a non-imposing presence. It says, I trust you. I'm here, but I won't take over. When someone truly feels heard, they become more confident. They feel valued. And from that, they give more. A loyal team is not built through pressure, but through silent encouragement. Not everyone is comfortable with silence, especially those in positions of authority. Many feel insecure if they're not the ones speaking or making decisions. But it's in that restraint that leaders discover the unmatched power of collective intelligence. The strongest organizations aren't built by a lone genius, but by a team where every voice has a place. And that only happens when the one at the top is humble enough not to dominate. Creating space for others to shine doesn't mean disappearing. It means being the ground they can stand on, firmly and with confidence. You're present, but not overpowering. You guide, but don't overshadow. That requires trust in yourself and in others. And it takes practice to stay silent when you want to speak, to listen when you want to debate, to observe when you're tempted to control. Leadership is an art, not a title. And in that art, silence is a refined instrument, knowing when to pause so others' voices can ring clearer. You don't need to raise your voice to make an impact. You just need to hold your presence with intention. At your next meeting, try not speaking first. Observe. Ask the quietest person, "What's your take?" Count to 3 before responding. Let people feel seen and respected, and you'll witness something remarkable. Respect, without having to demand it. True leadership isn't about leading every step. It's about guiding the space so others can rise with stability and self-belief. When you learn to lead with silent space, you don't just build your own success. You inspire those around you to become better versions of themselves. And that is the highest accomplishment of any true leader. Silence in leadership doesn't just make room for others to shine. It also nurtures a quieter, deeper strength, personal discipline that doesn't seek attention, doesn't need to be declared, but creates the most lasting change. In today's world, where every morning run becomes a story, every healthy meal is captured in a photo, and every new goal is broadcasted on social media, we are slowly losing something precious: the privacy of personal growth. And with it, we're losing the depth of focus that true discipline demands. Discipline isn't a burst of inspiration. It's not a loud New Year's resolution. Discipline is small, repeated actions, done even when no one is watching, no one is praising, and no rewards are in sight. And sometimes, to maintain that discipline, what you need most isn't attention, it's silence. Imagine someone beginning a personal transformation. They don't write long posts. They don't start a 30-day challenge group. They simply wake up 30 minutes earlier each morning to read. Quietly jot down reflections after each chapter. Quietly change what they eat. No one knows. No one cheers. But they show up, day after day. At first, nothing seems different. But after a month, their thoughts feel clearer. After 3 months, their clothes fit looser. After 6 months, their voice is steadier when they speak. After a year, people begin to ask, "What did you do to change like that?" And the answer might simply be, "I just did it, every day, in silence." Rebecca Chen, the national record-breaking athlete, didn't train with noise. No daily live streams, no flashy updates. She had one coach, a strict routine, and an unspoken promise to herself. No one knew, but her results spoke for themselves. Her discipline didn't live in public declarations. It lived in the quiet, repeated actions of each day. When you publicly announce a goal, you receive reactions, support, doubt, pressure. But your brain has already tasted the satisfaction of being recognized, reducing your real drive to follow through. Science backs this up. Being praised for an intention can make you less likely to complete the action. On the other hand, when you keep your goals to yourself, you're free from external expectations. You're allowed to try, adjust, even fail, without judgment. You don't have to perform. You just need to keep going. People with strong discipline often say little about their journey, not because they're hiding it, but because they know their best energy belongs in action, not performance. They don't need the label determined. They just see pages in their journal filled each night, a water bottle emptied each morning, a workout finished when the alarm rings. These are the real proofs, not loud, but unshakably solid. Quiet discipline is like laying bricks every day. No one praises the first. No one notices the 20th. But by the 365th, a wall stands, steady and undeniable. And people ask, "When did you build that?" You smile because you know, one brick, each day. That's it. Our culture is obsessed with quick results. 6 weeks to lose weight, 21 days to form a habit, 3 steps to success. But real discipline doesn't run on stopwatches. It doesn't need short-term deadlines. It needs long-term commitment. You may not see results immediately, but you're building something more important, a new identity. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you're telling yourself, "I am someone I can trust." And from that self-trust, you build inner confidence, the kind no one can take away. Disciplined people don't need supervision. They self-govern. They don't crave outside rewards. They earn something deeper, self-respect. When others hit snooze, they rise. When others quit, they continue. No one is watching, but they know they're doing what's right. And when the results finally appear, be it a finished project, a healthier body, a refined skill, they don't need to boast. Because the result speaks for itself. If you want to change something in your life, begin without telling anyone. Guard that motivation like a small flame in your palm. Don't let it be blown out by applause or pressure. Let it grow quietly, fed by your silence. Make your plans and track them privately. Write in a journal instead of posting online. Reward yourself instead of waiting for others to validate you. And when you feel tired, remind yourself, you've come farther than day one. That matters. Discipline doesn't feel heroic in the moment. It's a choice, every day, to show up or not. And every time you say yes to showing up, you're getting closer to the person you want to become. Don't turn your discipline into a stage. Let it be your foundation. Don't use it to impress. Use it to transform yourself. And one day, when you finally arrive at the life you worked for, you'll realize the most valuable thing wasn't the outcome. It was the quiet, steady version of you that rose along the way. When you've grown accustomed to perseverance in silence, to discipline without declarations, you begin to realize an even deeper truth. True strength doesn't come from controlling everything, but from the ability to adapt, quietly, yet flexibly, to the inevitable changes of life. In a constantly shifting world, the most successful people are not those with the most detailed plans, but those who are open-minded and quickest to adjust. Not because they don't fear change, but because they refuse to let that fear dictate their actions. When environments change, rules shift, markets fluctuate, and technology advances daily, the weak respond with complaints. The arrogant cling to the old ways. But the wise? They quietly step back, observe, adapt, and then move forward with renewed clarity. Margaret Coleman is a vivid example. After working for over 2 decades in her industry, everything changed due to new regulations. Her competitors organized press conferences, wrote public rebuttals, even filed lawsuits to protect the old system. But Margaret? She offered no protest. She simply adjusted her business model, restructured operations, and revised her strategy. While others argued about fairness, she discovered opportunity. That silence wasn't surrender. It was a shift from resistance to response. In personal life, too, change arrives uninvited. A relationship ends. A job disappears. A dream falls short. In these moments, you can spend time complaining, searching for blame, or you can choose instead to stay quiet, to observe, learn, and restructure yourself. Silence here is not resignation. It's a way to preserve your energy for what you can influence and release what you cannot. It's a pivot from helplessness to power. Those who react with complaints get stuck in the past, but those who act, even in silence, always move forward. Have you ever faced a sudden change, an unwelcome shift, an unexpected ending? You're allowed to feel sad, to feel disappointed, but after that, you face a powerful choice. Will you continue to live in resistance, or will you begin to adapt quietly? Change is inevitable. But adaptation is a skill, one that can be developed. And like discipline, it becomes most powerful when practiced in silence. You don't need to declare, "I'll overcome this." You just need to do one small thing each day to live better in the new reality. That might mean waking up early once, skipping social media once, learning a new skill once. No one needs to know, but you know. And that's enough to shift your world. Silence allows you to hear your inner voice, the one often drowned out by external noise. When you sit with change, not to resist it, but to understand it, you begin to see that every disruption carries a hidden invitation, seen only by those clear-headed enough to notice. In silence, you discern what truly matters, what must be released, what must begin again. And from that clarity, you don't need to react impulsively. You respond with intention. One person once shared, "I used to fear change because I thought I'd lose stability. But then I realized adaptability is the only true stability in a world that never stops moving." Adapting doesn't mean accepting everything. It means choosing wisely, adjusting effectively, and evolving consistently. And when done in quiet, that process becomes more powerful than any protest. You don't have to fight everything. You just have to become more flexible than everything. And flexibility doesn't mean bending to every whim. It means holding on to your core values while being willing to shift your strategies. You may choose silence, not to appear indifferent, but to focus your energy. Not to endure, but to evolve. Not to wait, but to prepare. Every major life change is a test, not of your ability to fight, but of your capacity to navigate quietly and intentionally. You'll surprise yourself. One day, looking back, you'll see. It wasn't a speech, a protest, or a public battle that got you through. It was your quiet, steady adaptation. It was your silent choice to adjust, again and again. That's when you won't need to prove anything, because your results will say everything for you. If quiet adaptation is the skill that allows us to respond wisely to change, then quiet persistence is the force that carries us through when change becomes a storm. Because not every hardship can be avoided, not every challenge can be neatly adapted to. Some must be endured, some must be outlasted. But how do we persist, quietly, consistently, when everything in us wants to give up, cry out, or justify surrender? Most people, when facing difficulty, turn to words. We explain our struggle. We post about how hard it is. We tell others why we're tired, overwhelmed, or stuck. It feels good in the moment. It feels like relief. But too often, we replace progress with conversation. We trade action for explanation. We give our energy to describing the weight we carry, instead of using that energy to take one more step forward. True endurance doesn't seek attention. It seeks solutions, and often it finds those solutions in silence. Think about the last time you faced something really hard, a personal loss, a professional failure, a painful mistake. How much time did you spend talking about it? How much time did you spend actually working through it? There's nothing wrong with seeking support, but there's a fine line between processing and prolonging, between healing and rehearsing the wound. The most quietly persistent people understand this. They allow themselves a moment to feel, to acknowledge, to grieve, and then they go quiet, and they go to work. William Harrison, the architect behind one of the world's most ambitious structural designs in the 1960s, faced an endless string of setbacks. Equipment failures, budget collapses, public doubt. While others held press conferences, made excuses, and blamed the weather, Harrison had only one statement for the media. "We're working on it. That's it. No drama, no performance, just quiet persistence." His colleagues recall long nights, repeated redesigns, and endless obstacles. But what they remember most was his silence. He never spoke of quitting. He never even spoke of how hard it was. He saved his words and his energy for action. When the building finally opened, not only did it break records, it won international acclaim. Reporters asked, "How did you stay so confident through all the setbacks?" He replied, "Speaking about the weight would have only made it heavier." There is profound truth in that. Every time we narrate our difficulties, we risk making them heavier. Every time we justify stopping, we give our doubts more power. But when we stop explaining and start enduring, we regain control. This doesn't mean you can't ever talk about your struggles. It means you choose when and how. You reserve your voice for when it will lift, not weigh you down. Quiet persistence is not glamorous. It won't go viral. It won't be celebrated daily. But it is the foundation of everything that lasts. It's the student who studies 1 extra hour each night, unseen. The entrepreneur who shows up day after day, even when the metrics look grim. The parent who keeps showing up with love, patience, and effort, even when exhausted. They don't do it for recognition. They do it because they made a commitment to their goal, to their growth, to someone they love. And they refuse to quit just because it's hard. Quiet persistence asks, "What's the next small step I can take?" And then it takes it. And when that step fails, it doesn't collapse. It doesn't complain. It tries again. Because quiet persistence isn't about never feeling discouraged. It's about continuing anyway. You don't need to announce your struggle to validate your strength. You don't need to post about your progress to make it real. You only need to keep showing up. Some of the most extraordinary success stories began not with inspiration, but with quiet resistance to giving up. The artist who painted alone for years before anyone saw her work. The scientist who ran failed experiment after failed experiment before one changed the world. The small town kid who practiced free throws every morning before sunrise and ended up changing the game. All of them had days where quitting would have made more sense. But they didn't stop, and they didn't shout about how hard it was. They just kept going. You might be in one of those moments now. Quiet, discouraged, tired, uncertain, but still moving. That's power. That's what builds legacy. Not the loud declarations of, I'll never quit, but the quiet decision every day to take one more step. You won't always be motivated, but you can always be disciplined. You won't always be inspired, but you can always be consistent. You won't always be sure, but you can always choose to keep going. Quiet persistence says, this is hard, but I'm still here. And someday, when the results finally bloom, when the weight lifts and the path clears, you'll know. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't a strategy. It was your silent refusal to stop. And that's the kind of strength no one can take from you. Because what's built through quiet endurance lasts. Quiet persistence teaches us that showing up matters more than showing off. And as we continue down this path of silent power, another truth emerges. Lasting impact isn't built on how much attention you receive, but on how much value you create. In a world obsessed with recognition, the people who truly shape the future are often those who quietly commit to doing great work, with or without the spotlight. There's a temptation we all face, the pull of being seen. We want our contributions to be acknowledged, our efforts appreciated, our names remembered. But there's a cost to chasing visibility, and often it's paid in the currency of quality. When your focus shifts from the outcome of your work to how it will be perceived, something subtle but dangerous happens. You begin to divide your attention. Half of you is thinking about the message you're crafting. The other half is wondering how it will be received. In that split focus, excellence suffers. Real value is built when all of you is present, not for applause, but for the work itself. Consider Elizabeth Mitchell, a quiet yet brilliant research scientist whose lab made several groundbreaking discoveries in the field of environmental biology. While colleagues scrambled for lead authorship and media quotes, she focused solely on the integrity of the data, the clarity of the research, and the purpose of the project. She rarely gave interviews. She let junior team members take credit for ideas she had guided. She spent more time in the field than at industry conferences. And yet, her work changed policy, saved ecosystems, and trained a generation of scientists who revered her. Not for her social media presence, but for her depth of contribution. When asked why she avoided the spotlight, she said, recognition is temporary. Contribution is permanent. Let that sink in. Recognition is temporary. Contribution is permanent. When you shift your focus from being known to being useful, everything changes. Your energy stops scattering and starts compounding. Your ego steps aside so that your excellence can step forward. And the irony? Over time, those who chase credit often fade. But those who create value, quietly, consistently, are eventually impossible to ignore because results speak. You don't need to tell people how good you are. Let your work make that case. Let your integrity be visible in the details. Let your impact show in the lives you've touched, the problems you've solved, the standards you've upheld even when no one was watching. That's the kind of recognition that lasts. Because it's not built on impressions, it's built on substance. You've probably seen people who constantly remind others of their role, who claim credit in every meeting, who perform more than they produce. And you've probably also seen that their influence doesn't grow, it shrinks. Why? Because when your focus is on being celebrated, your actions are driven by optics. But when your focus is on being effective, your actions are driven by purpose. Silent excellence is the art of doing your best work, even when no one is applauding. It's what builds trust. It's what earns respect. It's what lays the foundation for leadership that doesn't demand loyalty, but inspires it. You don't have to fight for your place in the room when your contribution already fills it. Sometimes you'll be overlooked. Sometimes others will get the credit. Sometimes your efforts won't be recognized at all. But if the work was worthy, then it was worth doing, regardless of who noticed. The world is full of people trying to look valuable. What it needs is more people who are actually valuable. And being valuable requires sacrifice. It means you may need to let someone else take the spotlight. It means you may need to let your results speak over your resume. It means you choose impact over image. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to be the face of every project. You only need to ask yourself, did I leave this better than I found it? If the answer is yes, keep going. Because one day, someone will ask how it all came together. And while others may point to the speeches and the slideshows, the awards and the headlines, those who know will point to you, the quiet one, the steady one, the one who wasn't loud, but whose results were undeniable, the one who built more than a reputation, the one who built real, lasting value. If value matters more than visibility, then the next step is just as clear. What we build should be designed to endure. True success isn't about a moment of applause or a season of achievement. It's about leaving something behind that continues to live, grow, and serve long after you're gone. And this kind of legacy is never built in noise. It is built in quiet consistency, through intentional actions, thoughtful choices, and invisible discipline. In the pursuit of greatness, we often become obsessed with speed. We want rapid progress, quick wins, immediate results. But anything that grows too fast without proper roots risks collapse. Just as a tree needs time to anchor its roots before it reaches for the sky, so too does our work, our craft, our mission, our impact need time, patience, and depth. Look around, and you'll see countless examples of overnight success stories. But peel back the curtain, and you'll often find years of silent preparation, late nights, quiet decisions, invisible sacrifices. The real work happened long before anyone paid attention. Consider Richard Thompson, founder of a literary journal that is now considered one of the most influential of the century. While competitors rushed to market with flashy layouts and bold headlines, Richard spent nearly 2 years in quiet preparation. He met with writers individually. He rewrote the editorial vision over and over. He tested his team quietly behind closed doors. Investors called him slow. Colleagues called him overly cautious. But when the first issue was published, it didn't just enter the market, it set a new standard. Years later, That journal is still in print, still shaping minds, still building culture. Because Richard wasn't chasing a trend, he was building what lasts. The lesson? Don't mistake movement for momentum. Don't confuse noise for depth. Don't trade lasting impact for temporary attention. The world may celebrate quick victories, but time honors those who choose to build slowly, silently, and well. To build something that lasts, you must resist the pressure to rush. You must resist the urge to prove. You must learn to love the process, even when no one sees it, especially when no one sees it. Ask yourself, if no one ever knew I built this, would I still build it? If no one ever applauded, would I still feel proud? If this takes 10 years, will I still be patient? These are the questions that filter out vanity and reveal purpose. Because anything built to last will require seasons of silence. There will be winters, times when growth is underground, invisible. There will be droughts, moments of doubt and discouragement. But if you keep showing up, keep planting, keep refining, you will eventually see the harvest. And it won't be fragile, it won't be fleeting. It will be solid, rooted, and real. What does this look like in everyday life? It's the artist who paints every day for a decade before their first gallery opening. It's the teacher who invests in one student at a time, never knowing how far those seeds will spread. It's the couple who choose connection over convenience, building a marriage that strengthens with time. It's the founder who builds infrastructure first, quiet systems that no one claps for, but that carry the mission forward when the spotlight fades. None of these stories make headlines at first, but they are the stories that endure. Because building what lasts means making peace with being overlooked. It means being okay with not being viral. It means showing up for the mission, not the moment. So much of our modern world is optimized for visibility. Quick hits, trending posts, highlight reels. But if you want to build something real, something that matters, you have to take the opposite path. The slower path. The quieter path. The deeper path. You build foundations when no one is watching. You refine systems when no one is celebrating. You craft with care, even when no one says thank you. And one day, what you've built will speak for itself. It will echo in the impact you've made, in the people you've touched, in the quiet dignity of a life not just performed, but lived with purpose. So, as you move forward, don't rush, don't shout, don't chase. Instead, build patiently, quietly, enduringly. Because the world doesn't just need more noise, it needs more work that stands the test of time. And you have the power to create it, not through a louder voice, but through a steadier hand, a clearer heart, and a commitment to build something that will outlive you. Once you understand the value of building things that last, you also begin to realize a deeper truth. The structures you build externally will only be as strong as the wisdom you build internally. And that wisdom isn't gathered through performance or prestige. It's grown through humility, curiosity, and above all, silence. We live in an age where the need to appear smart often overshadows the desire to actually grow. In conversations, meetings, and classrooms, too many people speak to prove they already know, rather than to uncover what they do not. But true growth doesn't begin with answers. It begins with questions. Real learners aren't the ones talking the most. They're the ones asking, watching, absorbing. They know that growth doesn't need a microphone. It needs attention, openness, and space. Think of Margaret Anderson. a seasoned business strategist who spent decades advising Fortune 500 companies. One day, she noticed her younger colleagues were spotting trends she had missed. Most in her position would have dismissed them, defended their status, or tried to reassert dominance. Margaret did something different. She scheduled private meetings. She listened. She asked questions. She took notes. When one analyst asked her why she wasn't offering more of her own expertise, she replied, "I already know everything I know. My future depends on what I don't yet know. And that's why I'm here." That's the heart of silent learning. In a world that rewards quick takes and confident opinions, it takes courage to admit what you don't know. But that very courage is what frees you to grow. The truth is, when you're talking, you're not listening. And when you're focused on displaying what you already know, you shut the door to what might transform you. That's why the most respected minds in history were often the quietest in the room. Because they understood, knowledge displayed is momentary, but knowledge gained in silence becomes a lifetime asset. Silent learners know when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. They observe the energy in a room. They notice what's not being said. They tune into subtle cues that others miss. They understand that listening deeply is not a passive act. It's an intentional one. It requires the strength to stay curious instead of jumping to conclusions. It asks you to hold back your need to appear impressive in order to become truly informed. Imagine entering every interaction with one simple mission: to leave wiser than you arrived. That doesn't mean agreeing with everything. It doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means staying open long enough to consider that someone else might hold a piece of the truth you don't yet have. When you do that, over time, you become more than knowledgeable. You become wise, and wisdom is quiet. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't seek approval. It grows slowly, silently, and then one day, it speaks with a clarity that silences the room. Think about your own life. When was the last time you walked into a situation, not with answers, but with open eyes? When was the last time you let someone finish a sentence you thought you already understood? When did you last pause long enough to learn something new from something familiar? Learning in silence doesn't mean you become invisible. It means you become unshakable, because you've grounded yourself not in what you can recite, but in what you deeply comprehend. In team meetings, it's the person who speaks last, after listening fully, who usually says something worth hearing. In mentorship, it's the guide who asks more questions than they answer who sparks the most growth. In strategy, it's the thinker who gathers data in quiet before acting who builds the most sustainable advantage. We've all met people who can speak eloquently but don't listen well. And we've met others who, with just a few words, shift the entire conversation. Because their words are rooted in observation, patience, and reflection. The next time you feel the urge to assert your knowledge, ask yourself, am I speaking to learn or to impress? Is this insight I'm offering, or just noise? What could I learn if I held this thought a little longer? You may find that in waiting, your ideas sharpen, your thinking deepens, and your voice, when it finally comes, carries more weight. Silent learners aren't chasing applause. They're chasing understanding. They know that ego seeks to be right, but humility seeks what is true. And in that humble pursuit, they grow faster, last longer, and contribute more meaningfully. So, build your inner world as carefully as you build your outer one. Protect time for reflection. Make space for silence. Ask more questions. Listen with full attention. Let your curiosity be louder than your pride, because in the end, the greatest thinkers are not those who shout the answers, but those who never stop asking the right questions. And the future doesn't belong to those who speak the most. It belongs to those who learn the most, quietly, consistently, and with great care. After you've embraced learning through silence, you begin to understand that not everything valuable needs to be validated. Just as true wisdom doesn't require applause, true achievement doesn't need public celebration. In fact, the most meaningful milestones in life are often those we honor privately, in the quiet corners of our hearts, far from the clamor of approval. In a culture where every success becomes a status update and every victory demands a spotlight, the act of celebrating quietly feels almost radical. But it's in that choice that we reconnect with something pure, the joy of growth for its own sake. The world teaches us that accomplishments only matter when others notice. But inner fulfillment teaches us otherwise. It teaches us that the most powerful celebration is not the loudest, but the one that resonates deepest. The kind that whispers, not shouts. Think of James Richardson, a visionary entrepreneur who led a small team in developing a product that would eventually disrupt an entire industry. While his competitors held press events for every minor breakthrough, James stayed silent. His team worked quietly. They tested, refined, and perfected without posting about it. And when the breakthrough finally came, he didn't call a press conference. He took his team to dinner. He celebrated not with fanfare, but with gratitude. Not with marketing, but with meaning. When asked years later why he didn't announce the win, James said, "Applause feels good, but if you're not careful, it becomes the reason you build. I didn't want applause to become my motivation. I wanted the work to be enough." And that is the heart of private celebration. You recognize the value of your effort, not because others recognize it, but because you do. You understand what it cost you. You know the nights you almost gave up. You know the mornings you chose discipline over comfort. You know how many times you had to rebuild what nearly broke. And so, when success finally comes, you honor it. Quietly, deeply, sincerely. Private celebration reconnects you with your internal compass. It reminds you that you are enough, without needing others to confirm it. It's not about hiding your wins. It's about owning them in a way that keeps you grounded. When you celebrate privately, you protect the purity of your achievement. You avoid the temptation to let outside approval become your fuel. And you learn to find satisfaction in the journey, not just the destination. Public recognition is not wrong, but it's risky when it becomes the only form of joy you recognize. Because what happens when the applause doesn't come? What happens when your success is invisible to others? That's when private celebration becomes essential. It fills the silence with self-respect. It transforms solitude into sanctuary. And it reminds you, you are still growing. You are still showing up. You are still enough. Think about your own life. When was the last time you paused to honor something you accomplished without telling anyone? When did you last close a chapter, complete a project, finish a season, and mark the moment just for yourself? Maybe it was a quiet cup of coffee at sunrise. Maybe it was a long walk with a full heart. Maybe it was a simple breath, whispered to yourself, "I did it." These moments may not be shared online, but they are carved into your soul. And that's where the most enduring joy is stored. Private celebration builds confidence that doesn't require audience. It creates motivation that can't be stolen. It cultivates pride that doesn't inflate your ego, but anchors your worth. And the best part? It keeps you moving, because you're not chasing praise. You're walking in purpose. You're not addicted to the high of public approval. You're grounded in the steady rhythm of personal growth. So the next time you achieve something meaningful, consider celebrating in silence. Write about it in your journal. Light a candle. Sit in stillness. Smile to yourself. Let the victory be yours before it becomes anyone else's. Because when you celebrate in private, you build something precious, a joy that belongs fully to you. And that joy will carry you farther than any applause ever could. Because applause fades, but fulfillment stays. And the quietest victories often leave the loudest echoes in the way you carry yourself, the way you lead, the way you love, and the way you live. Celebrate with depth. Celebrate with dignity. Celebrate with silence. Because in that silence, something beautiful is born. A kind of strength no spotlight can create, and no silence can ever erase. As we arrive at the heart of this journey, a singular message emerges from the layers of silent effort, invisible discipline, and uncelebrated victories. True power does not announce itself. It simply acts. It endures. It transforms quietly. We live in a world that constantly demands more noise, more visibility, more proof, more performance. But through every chapter of this silent path, we've discovered another way to live and lead. A way that is quieter, but far more grounded. A way that does not depend on the volume of your voice, but on the clarity of your values. In silence, we learned to listen. Not just to others, but to ourselves. In silence, we found the strength to persist, not with bravado, but with grace. In silence, we discovered that growth is not always loud, but it is always real. We've seen how quiet reflection gives rise to sharp insight, how silent observation builds wisdom, how disciplined actions, done daily in private, reshape identity over time. We've learned that leadership does not require dominance, that boundaries do not require explanation, that legacy does not require announcement. We've discovered that applause can feel good, but it is not fuel. That recognition can be a gift, but it should not be the goal. The work you do in silence, the early mornings, the disciplined evenings, the unspoken courage, the decision to continue when quitting would be easier. That is where your real transformation begins. You're not here to prove your worth to the world every day. You are here to build something worthy of yourself. And that doesn't always require an audience. Sometimes it only requires you. In a world of distractions, your ability to focus quietly is your edge. In a culture of performance, your ability to act without display is your strength. And in a society obsessed with validation, your ability to move without permission is your freedom. Let your silence speak. Let your consistency lead. Let your unseen efforts shape you. Because when the lights fade and the noise settles, what remains is not the image you projected, but the substance you lived. You don't have to talk louder to be heard. You don't have to be seen constantly to matter. You don't have to prove yourself daily to be powerful. Instead, you can live your truth quietly. You can work in peace. You can rise without fanfare. You can lead without demanding. You can succeed without permission. And when the moment comes, when the world finally asks, "How did you do it?" you won't need to explain. You'll simply point to the work, because your silence will have already told the story. A story of presence without pressure, of excellence without ego, of strength without shouting, a story only you could write. A story that will last. Let that be your legacy. If there is one enduring lesson drawn from this entire journey, it is this. What is built in silence becomes unshakable. From quiet beginnings to uncelebrated milestones, from unseen resilience to unspoken integrity, every chapter in this path has shown us that silence is not the absence of action, but the presence of something deeper: intention, clarity, and courage. In a noisy world, it's easy to mistake visibility for value. But what truly matters, what endures, isn't always seen, shared, or shouted. It's practiced. It's refined. It's lived. Silence teaches us that we don't need to seek validation for every step we take. We don't need to announce every intention or defend every decision. We simply need to keep building, keep learning, keep showing up. The lesson isn't about muting your voice. It's about knowing when to use it and when to let your actions speak louder. Silence teaches us to listen, not just to others, but to our own inner wisdom. That whisper inside us knows when something is right or off track. In moments of uncertainty, silence clears the fog. In moments of doubt, it anchors us. From silent reflection, we find insight. From silent discipline, we form habits. From silent perseverance, we build character. Silence teaches us that success is not a spotlight. It is a long corridor walked with integrity. It's not a single loud win. It's the quiet choice, made repeatedly, to not quit. It reminds us that leadership isn't about speaking the most. It's about creating space for others to be heard. That growth isn't about showing how much we know, but about humbly learning what we don't. In silence, we build endurance. We train ourselves to continue when the applause fades. We move forward without an audience. We become the kind of people who no longer need approval to feel proud, because we've seen the cost of our effort and we honor it ourselves. Silence helps us avoid the traps of premature celebration. It shows us the strength in letting results speak before we do. It keeps us focused on progress rather than performance. It teaches us that we don't have to win attention to do important work. And that often, the most important work happens away from the eyes of the world. Silence builds depth. It turns effort into mastery. It allows us to do more than impress. It allows us to transform. Because in the quiet there is room for clarity. In the quiet, we discover who we really are. And from that quiet place, we build work that matters, relationships that thrive, habits that hold, ideas that live beyond us. So what is the lesson? It's this. You don't need permission to begin. You don't need praise to persist. You don't need proof to have purpose. Let the noise swirl around you. Let others chase likes, spotlights, and applause. You keep building. Keep listening. Keep walking. Quietly. Boldly. Steadily. Because the ones who make the most lasting impact are not always the loudest. They're the ones who understand the rarest kind of strength. The strength of staying rooted. The strength of showing up. The strength of silence. Let silence shape your discipline. Let discipline shape your identity. Let your identity shape your legacy. That is the path of quiet mastery. That is the lesson silence teaches. And that is the kind of success the world can never take away.